And there was only one, really, that dominated the headlines since Thursday evening, and I'm sure it will be the talk of the industry for a little while longer. SteamPal is real, Matthew, but it's called Steam Deck. So, this was indeed announced on Thursday evening with a whole load of IGN coverage. The Steam Deck is what we speculated the SteamPal could be. It's quite Switch-like. So I'll try and go through the breakdown of the console in as concise a manner as possible. So it has a 7-inch LCD screen that outputs 1280 by 800 resolution. It has a button layout similar to the Elite Xbox controllers, in that it has all the face buttons and D-pads and analog sticks and whatever else that you would expect, but it also has 4 paddles on the back. It also has 2 trackpads either side of the screen, control like a mouse, essentially. Valve said that they're similar to what was on the Steam controller. And the console also has a gyro sensor, similar to a Wii U. It runs a custom version of SteamOS out of the box to give you that console-like experience. It's very Switch-like, if you look at it. If you quit out of a game on desktop and then fire it up on the Steam Deck, you can then play on with your cloud save. But it is a mini PC. This is what they're saying. So you will be able to install Windows if you want, and then install the Epic Game Store, the Xbox PC client for Game Pass, Ubisoft Connect, EA Origin, or whatever they're calling it now. It's just a mini PC. And because of that, you can also attach a mouse and keyboard to it. You can hook it up to a monitor or TV. Valve have said as well that there will be an official Steam dock sold separately. But IGN have said that a standard USB-C style dock would also work when hooking it up to a monitor or telly. We're not going to go into all the techiness of it, despite the fact that this is, the most momentous tech corner of all time. But according to Digital Foundry, the Steam Deck's chip is more similar to, when you look at the current console landscape, more similar to the Xbox Series S. It's not as powerful, but there are some similarities. Other kind of hardware facts about the Steam Deck is that Valve says the battery life is between 2 and 8 hours. Quite a disparity. Window. Yeah.
That's like when people are like, the game takes about 10 to 20 hours to complete. And he's like, well, which is it? One is literally twice the size of the other.
Yeah. Big gap there in the middle. It is about double the weight of a Switch, 669 grams versus 398
Have you got strong
grams.
wrists?
And it's a touch bigger in size as well. The comparison I've seen on social media is that it is like the width is similar to 2 Vitas side by side. A hefty boy. There will be 3 models available, at least at the start. They all have the same internals. It is mostly the hard drive space that's different, although the most expensive model does have this sort of anti-glare screen, and there are cases with some of them. But there is a 64 gigabyte model that does cost £349. There's a 256 gigabyte model that will cost £459, and the 512 gigabyte model costs £569. There is a micro SD to upgrade storage. But because they were saying, this is a PC, a Reddit user emailed Gabe Newell, g.newell@valve.com, and he said, can I upgrade the storage? You're saying this is a PC. The PC is an open platform. And Gabe said that you can, but since this was brought to light, the Steam Deck website has since been updated to say, quote, all models use socketed 2230 M.2 modules. It's just to do with the hard drives, right? But then afterwards, in brackets, not intended for end user replacement. So I don't know. But yeah, after the announcement, there was concern as well from some people over a couple of games and anti-cheat software. So like Apex Siege, Destiny 2 and PUBG won't run on Steam Deck right now as it stands. I know it's not out now, but like if it was, they wouldn't be able to. But Valve said that they're working on this issue, and all pre-orders went live on Friday, and just Steam was just destroyed by by interest from people and people trying to get their pre-orders in. But Anyone who did at first, they will apparently be getting their Steam Decks in December 2021. But if you tried to pre-order over the weekend, I checked on Sunday, I didn't check just before we started recording, but the earliest availability was Q1 of 2022. It might be different again depending on demand by the time you're listening or watching this.
Wow, what a insightful rundown of the Steam
Matthew,
Deck.
I have soaked up so much Steam Deck stuff because I was how can I make this? There's so many articles, so many videos. I was like, right, let's try and just give the people the facts that they want. But I mean, just an open question to start off, Matthew. What were your initial thoughts when you saw the Steam Deck?
Well, I was surprised. So I think we were a little sort of cynical about the idea of this. I think is a kind of correct interpretation of what we were saying about it.
I'd agree.
I couldn't really envisage it. I thought maybe, when there were the rumours of this talk, flowing around earlier in the year, I think we were talking about, potentially something which was just like an indie focused machine rather than this kind of full fat thing. So, always good to be surprised by something. My instant reaction was like, man, that is profoundly ugly as a piece of hardware. It really, really reminds me of the Wii U controller, which everyone had no shortage of harsh words for. I don't know what the consensus is on the look of the Steam Deck. I have a feeling that people are like the sort of Steam zealots wouldn't say one way or the other, really. I think it looks terrible. I think just as a physical thing, I think it really looks like a prototype, quite a sort of sloppy, careless, just mash. There's always big strips of sort of empty plastic on it. I don't know. It kind of the instant reaction, the instant thing that happened was people kind of like putting it up against the Switch or whatever, and and I know a lot, on the hardware front, it's a very different story in terms of like the innards, but just in terms of like as a sort of physical design, I think this looks pretty ropey. Those two little pads, the track pads, just look like they're sort of stuck on there. Just looks kind of sort of slapdash and slightly careless, which is always troublesome when you're being asked to then give them a huge amount of money. But maybe that's just me, and I'm just used to quite nice Nintendo hardware, and I feel like the console platform holders will go out of their way to make something which seems kind of quite slick and glamorous, so you can just feel kind of confident about it. This just, I don't know. I feel kind of the same way I felt about the Steam Pad, which was as a thing.
Yeah, I mean, they have, they've dabbled now with hardware a couple of times. Steam machines, bit of a bust, but the Valve Index, that did quite well. Steam controller, bit of a bust. So they are hit and miss.
But even that, I think that they always put function before form in their hardware. Like, I don't think they give a single shit about how something looks, how it is. They just don't value it. It's just about getting the thing to work, and it's a very PC focus. You don't buy a PC because they look nice. They're powerful things. It's the same with their sort of VR setup. It was cumbersome. It was messy. It absolutely kind of took over the room. But it got results compared to, say, what they try and do with like the modern Oculus, which is or the what's the standalone one called? Not the Journey.
The Quest.
The Quest. That's it. Which is designed that looks more like a friendly consumer product that someone might go for. But anyway, I don't know. That's just the physical form of the thing. Kind of interested on like the sort of the power of this thing, because obviously like the only sort of evidence we have of it is kind of being filmed off screen in like trailers and an IGN video where they were talking about playing. I think it was like Control.
Yeah. Hades was mentioned. Portal.
Hades. I mean, that's I've seen that running at 60 frames on Switch. I know I've full confidence that'll that'll work fine. Because it isn't the trade-off here that it's like, everything, you play everything at basically a 720 resolution. And at that, you can play games on sort of like medium to high settings at reasonable frame rates, seems to be the deal. Which is fair. Like, you don't probably need anything more for a screen that size. What I don't really understand is the sales pitch of this being this like mini PC that you plug into a monitor. Because if it is, it's going to be pretty weak. It's not, on paper anyway, it doesn't sound like it would be delivering what you want from a PC experience. But I am told by people who know more about this stuff than me, then like, for that money, what you're getting is pretty decent. It would be hard to build a similarly powered thing for 350 quid if you were just building like a small little underpowered kind of indie machine.
Well, that was kind of going to be my next question is who do you think this is for? Because, the lowest price is, what did I say, about 350 quid. But the hard drive space in that, 64 gigs, are there going to be Steam Deck versions of PC games that compress the files a bit more so that you can...
I mean, that's a generally like bigger question is about like, I think a huge part of this thing's success is what steps, if anyone, people take to like prep their games for it. Because, I think, not to keep making about the Switch in this, but that has been like...
That's the obvious comparison.
Yeah, like, I've just seen a lot of people that instantly saw it and jumped on like, Switch is dead. I don't think that for a second, because... that is a huge platform which people are making bespoke things for, bespoke versions. It's, yes, PC stuff already scales, but, there are bigger questions like on simple usability fronts, like fonts, for example, on that tiny screen are basically going to make a lot of text-based games an absolute nightmare unless people go in and completely recalibrate them and blow these things up. Like the idea of playing like Disco Elysium on this. Yikes! No, thank you. Unless you can really scale that stuff up, it feels like people will have to go in and tidy their stuff up. And are they going to be willing to do that? Is it going to have instantly the size and scale of audience that it's going to be worth doing that? Like, obviously, going forward, you can factor it into your decisions. But this. I already own 1,000 games for this. And it's like, you own 1,000 unoptimized games for this handheld. I mean, it is like, that's a question you just aren't going to know the answer to until you get it and play it, I guess.
Yeah, there have been some wild takes on this from both. Because, two companies in video games who have, these rabid fan bases, that just are impossible, are Nintendo and Valve. And, this Steam Deck now has them at loggerheads. My thing is better. But to say there's no obvious comparison points, is wrong. Of course there is. You're talking now Valve is coming into the space that Nintendo have dominated, and saying the Switch is dead, of course, is ludicrous. Because you're not going to get Mario, Zelda on the Steam Deck. But a lot of people do consider the Switch their indie machine as well. It's their current Steam Deck. It's how they play their indie PC games on the go. That is something we didn't consider wrongly when we were talking about the SteamPal originally and talking about how a lot of the indie games are already on Switch, etc. But you get them for a lot cheaper on Steam than you do on Switch.
That is true, and that's a big advantage it has. I mean, this idea of if you already have a Steam library, it's a very different proposition as well to if you don't, if you are currently playing on Switch and you've just been buying this stuff up on Switch, then maybe you don't need to rebuy, and there's less appeal here. The other thing you simply can't get your head around is until you hold the thing is how viable it is going to be for portable play, because it's considerably heftier than the Switch, which is already a machine some people find too uncomfortable for portable play. I mean, it's twice the weight. That's substantial. It's also massive. The idea of carting that thing around, it just, I don't know, it feels kind of like, it's like a weird halfway house between a Switch and like a gaming laptop, which I don't have a huge amount of affection for because they're also quite hefty. You know, the few that I've seen kind of Catherine, test for reviews and stuff, they're always these massive, great kind of industrial things covered in vents. They get incredibly hot. Like, I have basic questions about how this thing like functions on that level. Like, is it going to be boiling hot like a PC, or is it going to be quite smooth and painless like a Switch? I mean, the other thing, and this is like maybe like a deeper level of what you want this for. Like, the games that I play on PC and that I really like on PC are like the shiniest versions of the most cutting edge games. The big graphic beasts, which these days we have the PC plugged into a TV. I like to play in big. Like, there is always a question of what games scale onto a smaller screen. I know people will say, people like Breath of the Wild on Switch Portable, and that's fine, and absolutely. But at the same time, like, that is not the optimal place. I've always felt that there's a big misunderstanding of handheld gaming, that what people want is just the home console experience. This is kind of what fucked Sony with the Vita.
Yeah,
when Nintendo DS was doing quite bespoke handheld games for the DS, Sony kept coming out with like, it's a Vita, but it plays Uncharted. It's like, no one wants to play Uncharted on a screen the size of a stamp. That isn't the appeal of Uncharted. That is a big TV experience. And the idea of like, yes, this can play your Controls, or this can play your Jedi Fallen Orders or whatever. Fine, fair, whatever. But like, that isn't necessarily what I want, what I want to be doing. So like, it maybe makes more sense to me as this kind of indie machine, and that will also get it round the kind of the limitations with those shinier games. Because it feels like, there is going to be a natural cap of like what it can do. Like, how does this thing handle like Red Dead Redemption 2, for example? Things which are reasonably beast-like.
But
yeah, I don't know. I just
like I know you're kind of focusing on the portability of it, but what about just? I mean, in the same way that Switch, it's a hybrid console. Like the Steam Deck, it does seem like the fact that you could. Like, let's say you have your desktop down in the bottom room and it's a pain to drag that up into the front room and plug in the telly, whereas with the Steam Deck...
This is not powerful enough to play, like, things how you want to see them on a big TV, is the vibe I get from it. Like, sure, if you want to play those games at this, like, very low resolution at medium settings in your big TV, I don't know, that isn't what I want from PC gaming. On a monitor up level, that feels to me.
How often do you play your Switch on the TV, or is it exclusively a handheld machine for you?
No, about half and half, and it really depends on the game. Like Zelda and Mario, I play more on the TV, but those are games which have been made with that power of that console specifically in mind to make it look as good as it can on the TV. There is a big difference between playing that and like the idea, like, well, you don't need an Xbox because this can also play Control on it. But like, I just want to see it. That's what I'm saying. Is I want to see what Control looks like when this thing's plugged into a TV, because it feels like it's designed to play it on that tiny screen at 720p. I think it's just a bit misleading to talk about this like, oh, you can just plug. It's a desktop PC as well. It's like, yes, technically true. But, how compromised,
Yep, and it is something that we will...
like, that it is this open platform, yes, important to PC gamers. For me personally, not so much. Like, the thing I like about... The reason I am more into PC gaming now than I used to be is that Steam has turned it into more of a console experience. The launchers have turned PC into more of a console experience. Like, the more the PC behaves and looks like a console, the better for me. So this on paper, the idea of like freedom and the idea of being able to meddle and take things off it and install other things, that doesn't speak to me. Maybe it speaks to other people who'll have a better idea of like what those specs in it. You know, maybe this will become like the ultimate emulation machine because you can just shove any old shit on it, and you know,
probably,
and it'll be a dream from that level. But I don't know. Like, I'm reasonably conservative in like how I play my games and how I use my PC. So that stuff, like, it's just not a selling point to me. Like, I like you know, if anything, you know, console, you know, handheld hardware. You know, part of the appeal for me has been that it's just kind of neat and tidy, and it does a thing, and you know what it does. And it's not like the appeal is that it's locked down. The appeal is this is simple. I don't have to worry. But it sounds like out of the box, this is too, and you'd have to go out of your way to like meddle with that.